So great to be back with you once again for the moments that matter. Round two here in the Hungry Jacks. NBL is in the book, and wow, you could be forgiven for thinking that this is playoff basketball already. It has been a round full of intensity and emotion, Derek Rucker.
It was. In this game today between Sydney and Illawarra, the rivalry lived up to everything that we had anticipated. Justin Tatum's men came in here, Jack, executed the game plan, carry themselves with confidence, and they get out of here with a big-time season early in round two.
That's three in a row now that Illawarra have beaten Sydney here in this venue at Kudos Bank Arena, and it's a 3-0 start for the Hawks.
And they couldn't have asked for a better launch to the season, and they've looked really impressive in all three of those games, but I think this was the most impressive one. Everyone knows the caliber of the Sydney Kings roster, and to come into their court on the home opener, that's got to be extremely satisfying and pleasing for Coach Justin Tatum.
Okay, so I know it's only round two, but let's try and play this scenario out a little bit. If in the eyes of most, the vast majority, the Sydney Kings are the #1 seed for this NBL season, are the Illawarra Hawks currently the #2 seed?
Well, it looks like it, and you've got to add in Melbourne United, you've got to look at Perth, and obviously the defending champions, the Tasmanian Jack Jumpers, they're in the mix also. But right now, when you actually observe how the Hawks move, how they're playing, their style of play, the players they have, and how those players can sustain this level of performance over the course of the season, that's what gives me a lot of confidence about the potential of this Hawks team to chase a championship.
They look very good. They're very big. And the other thing which is really noticeable today, being in the venue and seeing Justin Tatum from a couple of metres away, this group seems so in sync with each other and what they are trying to do and what they need to do.
It is, and you can see every player is well aware of what his role is and how that role suits the pursuit of winning. And whether it's Wani Swakala-Bullock, Hyunjung Lee, Dave O'Hickey, all these role players, Jack, understand how they fit in. And there doesn't seem to be any dissension or disharmony about playing time, which is vital in trying to keep everyone happy. And then they have their stars. They've got the guys who they pay to go out there and get buckets, and also critical buckets, and none was better today than Tyler Harvey.
He just owns fourth quarters. It's as if for 3 quarters the plans are one thing, and then in the fourth quarter, Ruck, it's like, how do we just get the ball to Tyler every time?
And I love that he's taking his scoring ability and that elite level shot-making ability and used it and parlayed it into creating opportunities for teammates and using his skills to make his teammates' scoring opportunities better, and he deserves a lot of credit for that development.
So the Sydney Kings with their first loss of the season, as we say, it's only early. They crawled over the line a little bit on Friday night against the Wildcats. They had a big lead and saw that nearly slip away, and then well, it was an 11-4 run to finish off the game for Illawarra. It's still early for this Sydney team, but have they got a bit of an issue with managing games late?
It is. It's, you know, I raise a red flag a little bit on crunch time performance. And the other night out in Perth, they let not the strongest Perth lineup. Keanu Pender was down. They had no Ben Henschel. They let Elijah Pepper come in there and go to work. And, you know, that game could have gone either way in Perth. And right now, I think, as well as the defensive stuff, which I'm sure Brian Goorjian isn't terribly pleased about, they've also got to figure out what's our crunch time lineup? What are our defensive coverages and schemes look like? Where do we put the ball? Whose hands do we want the ball in late in the game? I thought they got a bit singular with their focus. There was a lot of the ball on the bounce late in the game, and especially Jalen just didn't have it today. And that's unfortunate for him. But perhaps on those games where he's not having it and he's not his dynamic best, they've got to come up with some offensive spacing and movement where they're able to capitalize on other guys' potential and talent.
Let's talk about the Adelaide 36ers. It was a performance that was a bit of a head-scratcher, to be honest, yesterday against the Cairns Taipans, in particular Isaac Humphries, Ruck. There's a big problem here early in the season, and the arrival of Montrezl Harrell, as great as it's been for the league and for Adelaide, it feels as though it's caused a lot of issues for Isaac Humphries. He's had 10 field goal attempts in 2 games, and in his 2 games, he's been -24 and -32.
But, Jack, this goes all the way back to the Blitz, where there were murmurs about Humphries not getting enough touches. I think they corrected in one game, but obviously it hasn't been lasting. And when he doesn't get touches, he loses his rhythm. All of a sudden, his footwork looks awkward, and he doesn't play with the same fluidity that we've seen him play with when he's really devastating. So where do they fix all of this? Well, I think they've got to go out now and zag a little bit and try and figure out ways to get Montrezl Harrell more involved and take some of the burden off of Isaac and not rely on him to provide so much scoring. Let him work his way into the lineup. And the other thing is you want to make sure that you're keeping Harrell somewhat happy. And we see how good he can be in the league. He finishes well. He's exciting. He's got all those attributes you're looking for, but it's got to turn and it's got to lead to wins.
Does some of this, though, come back on Isaac a little bit in terms of finding other ways to get involved in the game? I mean, we've just seen Sam Froling today. Not often do Illawarra draw something up for Sam Froling. We saw Will Magnay last night for Tasmania. Most of the time, it's Will going out there and hunting and chasing and creating. Does Isaac, or could he be a little more proactive in this space?
Well, you can even add Xavier Cooks to that mix because these are guys and frontline guys who go out there and you don't necessarily have to execute plays for them. They're getting on the offensive glass. They're scrapping and they're fighting, which is part of the DNA of an effective big man. So I think Isaac, as well as hopefully getting more stuff run for him, also needs to go out there and make some plays for himself and get on that O glass and just, you know, try and be disruptive on the offensive end, get tips on balls, get to the free throw line when possible. But then the other thing, Jack, and it always comes back to this, the point guard play is significant. The point guard must ensure that the ball is getting to the players who need touches. You've got to identify the emotions of the players when they need the ball. Well, how's this guy feeling right now? He hasn't had the ball 3 times down the court. Let me get Isaac into an on-ball situation and see if I can create for him. Even if he's setting a good screen, I think all Isaac wants is to feel good on the basketball court and appreciate it.
At the moment, there's all these jigsaw pieces and none of them are fitting together. It's a bit of an issue for Adelaide to start the season.
Well, I mean, I thought that was a game that they would win handily.
They should have.
Based on how we saw them play in Perth against Sydney. And they have a lot of firepower. And I thought that was a little bit of a stunted performance up in Cairns. But again, let me reiterate, going up to Cairns is never easy, and people are continually shocked. You go up there, they're undermanned, you say, oh, we'll go up there and handle our business. You better go up there legit because they've got some pieces and they can beat you on their home court.
And the main piece now is Rob Edwards. And we weren't sure what it was going to look like for Cairns this season because Tajir McCall has been a presence for the last couple of years and Pat Miller came in last year as well. Rob Edwards, to me, Ruck, just watching that game, feels like the perfect piece for the Cairns Taipans. He's infectious, he's a scorer, he's already got that home crowd in raptures. This looks like a brilliant piece of recruiting from Adam Ford.
Well, with one player, you've replaced 2 players. So Edwards gives you some of the stuff that Tajir McCall could do, but he's a far better offensive player. And he gives you a lot of the intensity and strength and physical prowess that Pat Miller gave you, except he's a nice size. He's not a small player out there. And now you can add pieces around him, and when Taron Armstrong gets better, there won't be so much pressure on Taron to come out there and perform now that they've got a W under their belt. But let me also say this. He's a perfect fit for Cairns. As you said, you could feel the charisma that he was exuding, and the crowd picked up on it in only their first home game.
I found watching it, I was watching it on a laptop ahead of the Tasmania game. I was drawn to Rob Edwards. Every time the camera was on him, I just wanted to see what he was going to do next.
And he's multidimensional on the offensive end. He can get to the rack. He's strong. He gets to the free throw line. He can nail you from the 3. He's got a lot of talent. And again, that was a warning shot to the rest of the league. When you take that long trip up to Cairns, you better go right to your room and get ready to play basketball. Don't go walking down the Esplanade hanging out, all right, because Rob Edwards is going to get you.
Tasmania, there's no Esplanade, I don't think, in Hobart, but what there is a fantastic venue, MyState Bank Arena, a tough place to win, which we'll get to a little bit later on. Jack Jumper's too good for Melbourne United last night. There was a lot of talk after round 1 with Tasmania with their loss to Melbourne. Scott Roth was a big talking point, quite cranky in his interviews. And there was discussion around Tasmania just being away from home and going to the Intercontinental Cup. Now that we've seen what we've seen from Tasmania last night, having slept in their own beds all week, do we give them a little bit of a pass for round one?
I think they do get a minor pass. And also having Craig Sword back. Now, his contribution wasn't major, but sometimes just the comfort of knowing you're starting to build the squad out again and you have access to more players can do a lot for a team's confidence. And of course, the big one is playing at home in front of that crowd. I watched the game and I could just feel the energy and the enthusiasm in your call. We've been there. We know the impact it has on visiting teams. And Melbourne United, Jack, they just couldn't score. And I've got some concerns. I know this isn't a Melbourne United segment, but I've got some concerns about their ability to score on the front line other than Jack White. Jack White is proving that he's an all-NBL type player. He had 21 points. He was outstanding. But somebody else, Rob Lowe, Kyle Bowen, Marcus Lee, somebody else is going to have to provide some offensive punch on that front line.
Are you worried about the big men department for Melbourne United? I mean, it was so potent for them last year with JLA and Ariel Hook-Porty. It doesn't feel at the moment that they're getting that same punch.
Losing JLA and Hook-Porty was a massive loss offensively and defensively. But I think, so those guys that they have now, Lowe, Lee, and Bowen, they can do the job defensively. It's just on the offensive end. Last night, they were hurting for buckets. And, you know, there's going to be a lot of focus from opposition teams on those guards and shutting the guards down. Jack White is a talent, so he's probably going to get his no matter what the opposition tries to do. But it's those other bigs. Can you give me 15 points and 10 rebounds at a high level? They need Marcus Lee to get more. You know, and I thought the highlight of the game is the terrific Magne block.
Yeah, let's talk Will Magne.
On Lee. And that energized that crowd. And Tasmania, probably more than we give them credit for, they play on a lot of emotion. And plays like that are emotional plays, you know. And then Jordan Crawford's feeling himself. He gets the ball after the Magne block, knocks down the three, and the place erupts. That's very hard to come back from if you're Melbourne United.
The Perth Wildcats is an interesting situation before we get the thumbs up, thumbs down. No Ben Henschel on Friday night that you mentioned. What it did do was create an opportunity for Elijah Pepper. And he came in and he took his opportunity in the fourth quarter, finished up with 18 points. But Henschel will be back next week. Pepper's in good form. What does this mean for Ty Webster and the rotations going forward?
All right, so let's start this with Ben Henschel, a talented young 20-year-old player who can shoot the ball. He's athletic. We saw some moments from him last season. He has to find minutes in that Perth rotation, okay? Whether it's for this season, for the future, whatever, you've got to find out what he can do.
Otherwise, he's going to go somewhere where he will get minutes.
Exactly. And with NBA, there'll be international opportunities for him if he shows that he's able to do something on the basketball court. So let's go to Elijah Pepper. Put in good minutes last night, 18 points. That's nothing to sneeze at against the Sydney Kings. So you've got to explore him a little bit. Yeah. Okay, is this something that we can count on? So he deserves minutes. There's only so many minutes because Bryce Cotton is playing 35. Ty Webster is under the pump, I believe. He's got to provide strong point guard play. He's got to be outstanding on the defensive end. But most importantly, Jack, I believe he's got to be a perimeter threat. He's got to be able to shoot the ball at least 36, 37%. Because if Bryce doesn't have a complement out there that's a threat from the three-point line, like we think Henschel and Pepper may be, then Ty's probably going to have a tough time finding minutes in the rotation.
Ruck, let's talk about the Southeast Melbourne Phoenix. This was a team that I must admit I had finishing in the top four. Now, I'm not throwing the baby out with the bathwater yet, but they are 0-3 to start the season, and it does not look good.
Well, Jack, NBL history would tell you that you start 0-3, your chances of being eligible for the postseason are less than 10%. And this was a disappointing one. You know, I'm sure they went over there with a plan to take out New Zealand. And what does it mean now in the lead up to round 3? Well, they've got to figure out a way just to play better basketball as a team. And look, they'd be feeling a lot of pressure. Let's speak it honestly. The whispers go around about players and coaches in this league quickly. And Mike Kelly needs to figure out a way to get some wins on the board.
Would you be as bold as to bench one of your stars leading into the next game, and you got a guy like Angus Glover as examples on the bench who you know will give you 100% effort 100% of the time at both ends of the floor, would you be tempted to make a change just for one game and see what effect that can have?
Well, risk is a part of our game. And if you're risk averse, you're probably just not going to thrive as much as you potentially could. And I think it is time for a shakeup. And we saw this last year with the Perth Wildcats when they went on a long losing streak and John really started benching guys. He made changes. And then that turned their season around. Maybe it's time for Southeast Melbourne to do that. But again, maybe before you do that, you find what your identity is.
What is their identity? Because I'm not sure I can tell you right now.
And until they get that right, it's going to be some long days down there in the heartland.
Thumbs up, thumbs down. Let's start with the negatives. Where are we going?
The negatives, I thought it was not because of anything that they did intentionally, but the Bullets' circumstances right now have gotten really unfortunate. And we hope that Mitch Norton's injury isn't serious. Dang Adele went down. Josh Bannon hasn't come back yet. And James Bateman looks like he's flirting with being incapable of playing in our competition.
He's got about 5 more minutes, I reckon, before Brisbane are going to be forced to make a decision. Is that unfair?
It's not unfair. Now, I don't know what their salary situation, what their budget is like, but they need better point guard play, and especially if Norton is out for any extended period of time. I've had hip flexor injuries. That's what it was mentioned as being a possibility. You know, at minimum, that's a 2 to 3 week injury. It's a tough one to come back from. So right now, Brisbane realistically only have one point guard, and that's James Bateman.
Yep.
We cannot have single-figure scoring. We need assists. There needs to be more productivity from that position. Otherwise, you're putting too much pressure on the balance of the lineup. Casey Prather still working his way into the lineup back from injury. He showed moments where he looks solid and other minutes aren't so good for him. Cook has been solid. But right now, Jack, they've got the Sydney Kings arriving on Saturday for their home opener, for the Bullets' home opener. They need to dig deep and find a way to win that game.
My thumbs down, we're going to stay with the point guards. We've touched on him already. He's Kendrick Davis from the Adelaide 36ers because he's got scorers all around him. Now, he is a scorer, Kendrick, and he may not be the perfect fit for this team with the way that they are assembled. Maybe he's too much of a scorer to be the facilitator, but right now, the offense is not running the way that it needs to run. And whether that's Kendrick that needs to take on more responsibility himself or become more of a facilitator, but in these situations, Rucker, it really starts and finishes with the point guard to make sure that it works.
It does, and he had a bad turnover late in that fourth quarter where he tried to get into the gap, and Jonah Antonio got a hand on the ball when the game, I believe, was tied or it was a really tight game. And how do you bounce back from moments like that where you know you let your team down and you've got to be the leader, you've got to be the guy that is really the catalyst for positivity? So I'll have an eye on him also, as well as James Bateman this week and next round to see how these guys bounce back.
Let's finish off with the good stuff then. Thumbs up.
Well, I think there's no doubt. You win you win 2 games in a round like the Illawarra Hawks did, you get the thumbs up, especially when you come in here on the second leg of it and you handle, you know, the Sydney Kings. The Kings came out and they were bringing it. They had a handy lead in the third quarter, but Illawarra fought back and just showed that toughness that has been kind of a trademark of the Justin Tatum-led Illawarra Hawks. And, man, they're going back down the freeway feeling really good about themselves.
They are a very, very good team, Illawarra, no question about that. My thumbs up is a slightly different one, just based off recent experience. Was there last night. My State Bank Arena, it's now 7 of the last 8 that Tasmania have won in that venue. We can have a poll about what's the toughest place to go and win at, but based on what I'm seeing them travelling around, I think Tasmania is the hardest place to win right now if you're the road team.
And I don't think many would argue with you. And I like what Crawford and Doyle continue to do. Again, they're not playing with the efficiencies that I would love to see, but they just keep making plays at the right times. And that could be the formula for them. Maybe they don't reach the efficiency levels that I had hoped for this season, but they can counter that by hitting big shots, making big defensive plays, and providing an emotional burst through their plays that lift the team.
That's us done for Moments That Matter. Thanks for watching, of course, and you can stay up to date right throughout the week at NBL.com.au for all the latest news, information, stats, Supercoach scores, and a whole lot more. We'll catch you next week.